Hello and welcome to today's video, which we're going to discuss hip rotation and why it's so important for many reasons. Firstly, preventing back pain, which is always a good idea. You don't want to have back pain, it can ruin you. Secondly, it promotes athletic development. And thirdly, it creates massive amount of power for many of the sports that people play. You know, any like golf pictured here, but tennis, baseball, hockey, even change of direction, which is sort of like the athletic development. So things like basketball and football, pretty much all of those sports, the rotations, the one thing that makes you super athletic. So if you have tight hips, you'll really be unable to do that. So, you know, how do you overcome that? How do you prevent those things? Well, I'm going to show a couple of exercises in this video, but firstly, I'm going to explain how it creates back pain. When your hips are too tight, it's prevents you from like using what you should be using, which obviously is the hips and the shoulders. So the rotational torso motion comes from those two areas. If the hips are too tight, the body will be forced to find a new way, and that new way will be to twist your spine. This is really, really bad. This is how you like create massive disc problems, facet joint problems, just about anything, you know, like nerve irritation, the whole works. It can really, really leave you in a lot of pain, and you know, just simple everyday tasks like vacuuming, and that would be really hard. So the spine needs to remain stable, more or less stiff. So then the hips are super mobile, that they do all of the work, and the spine just stays in neutral position. Now, most people use core exercises like planks and various things like that to stiffen themselves up, which thinking, okay, I'm going to stiffen the spine, but the problem is they stiffen their hips, and they don't actually loosen their hips, so now they just exacerbate their problem. So and then things like a bent over row here, you know, where you need the hip mechanism to be in the neutral position. It just you can't even do that. That's not even a twisting exercise, but now the lack of hip mobility exposes you just to bend over. And yet alone in an exercise like in this case, a wood chop exercise, you know, like you're really needing that trail leg to sort of swivel around, but the core remaining very stable and strong so that the spine doesn't twist. All right, so tight hips will ruin your back. I'd make no mistake about it. And just stretching it is only one part. You must learn how to move correctly. So you've got to teach the whole system how to work together. So I'm going to show you a quick example of a guy who was training with me for quite a while, who came to me for a hip problem that was becoming a back problem. And you'll see exactly what it looks like when he does it versus what we do. All right, so let's take a quick look at that.
Okay, here's a video where I'm going to show you good form with a reverse cable wood chop versus poor form and common mistakes that we'd usually see. Understanding that this is quite a complex exercise, most people underestimate just how much this can do, good and bad. So let's have a look at the common mistake that we see first. And here's a client that basically this guy's had a massive hip dysfunction that's just pretty much disrupting all of his system with every movement really that we teach him. But you can see here his initiation, the very first thing of the movement, you can tell he's all arms, because you can see most of everything that's moving is arms. It's like a big bicep flex, and then he's trying to muscle it up with his arms and really just got no movement from his leg, especially the right leg. He gets down in a bit of a squat there, but there's no transfer of weight. You see how his hip is sort of like just staying stuck on the spot here. So this leg here, if you watch this as it continues, he just sort of really doesn't go anywhere with it, just goes straight up. At that time you sort of come around a bit, but there's no real transfer to the other leg. You know, and even there he's starting to fall out. Really, his centre of gravity is still, he's already on the other side, he's already over there. So let's have a look at how I do it, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about here. So when I do it, I've got all of my weight, and you watch the very first part of when I move, see how there's already a transfer of weight. My arms haven't gone yet. See that? My legs are doing everything for me once I get to the middle, you'll see how that now I'm starting to come through. Where we go back to this guy at the very start, and you'll see his very first movement. You see that? It's all arms, and there's no real leg movement, so he's just going up. See that? Up. Where if I come back to me, you'll see there's a shift of weight there, and look at the arms position that I'm holding. So where you can tell that I'm not, in anyone who plays golf will tell you they need that little V. Crucial where this, on the mistake side, you'll see that there's like it's very much like bent. There's no real straight, like so. All right, so it gives you again another really good idea on where everything's going wrong. And then the last bit on the follow through, if I just replay that again, so I'm loading up, weights on the right, swing through, and then the hip rotation at the end. Weight's probably not enough. You can see the slack on the cable, and this hip here is facing directly where I would have thrown it to, where you can see where he's finished there, right? So if I go back, he's finished, but look where his hip's facing. It's facing towards us this way, but he was trying to throw it that way. All right, so he has no hip. That's where the hip is disrupting the whole mechanism of the movement. All right, so this is quite a good video to see. This is a good exercise for anyone to learn hip mobility and getting explosive power for sports, but it's also a great one for correcting postural problems and movement dysfunction of hips. All right, this one can really change a lot when you start to get it right.
All right, that was pretty cool. All right, so you got an idea of what I mean, and that's a great exercise to use to begin with to teach how to integrate the patterns. But what about if you don't have back pain? What do you do? How does it promote athletic development? Well, things like just simple things like turning to sprint, turning and throwing, turning to hit or kick a ball, like in the case of the soccer guys here. These are all things that you need that rotational, and it will come from the hips. The hips are like going to do all of the work for you. And sometimes it's from a stationary position like baseball. Other times it's from a moving position. This is where like most conditioning programs fail, because they're pretty much rely just on exercises that are done in a straight line, like deadlift, squats, even lunges. I know they are great exercises, don't get me wrong, but they don't promote rotational power, rotational mobility. You need to practice if this pretty much makes up your game, you need to make that a big part of your training. All right, so bench press, for example, here is not really going to help you at all to develop hip mobility. All right, so how does it develop power though? Right, so well, in the case of even simple things like throwing the ball, let alone hitting it, and golf, in baseball, like they found that the maximum speed is 714 degrees per second by a shoulder segment rotation of 937 degrees per second. The product of this kinetic link is a maximum linear bat velocity of 31 meters per second. In the golf swing, is basically the swing's completed in 250 milliseconds. Right, so that's extremely fast. So most people don't rate golf as a sport needing a lot of strength or power, but as you can see here, it needs a hell of a lot. All right, so firstly, you need to learn how to get the hips to move forward. So I'm going to show you a couple of cool exercises here. The first one's more of a stability exercise, and it's called the hip block, and this really helps you to learn how to stabilize through the spine and block through the hips to get the hips to do all the work. Most people struggle with the stability. They fall off the ball. They're just so tight through the hips they can't roll, and they're very unstable. They don't know. They just can't work it out. It doesn't really need a lot of strength, or it doesn't hardly need any strength, this exercise. The second one I'm showing you is the tornado ball, and this one is like in a standing position. It very much looks like the swing, and to get this to work well, you just need explosive power and timing. All right, so let's have a look at these two exercises very quickly.
This exercise we call the hip roll. This is quite a unique exercise. This one, it actually doesn't require very much strength at all. So it's So even for the person with not a lot of strength in them, they can do this one quite well. The biggest problem you'll have with this one is the lack of flexibility and a bit of the coordination. All right, so we use this one very as an athletic movement for golf players, hockey players, anyone who like cricket, anyone that has to have tennis, anyone that needs that explosive rotation. But it's excellent for people with low back pain because it's a great one on how you again try to get the hips to do a lot of mobility work for you, and while keeping the upper body still. So you see, as I'm moving, my arms and my shoulders, I was trying to stay still, but my hips are going to rotate really fast through there and really fast through there. If I don't have enough flexibility, I'll fall off the ball. I'll actually roll the ball too far that way or that way. Alright, so let's have a look at how I do it, and I'll play this a reasonable quick speed for you, a relatively normal speed, and you'll see how quick I move through there, but my whole body my upper body maintains the stability while the legs are sort of like rotating quite quickly. Alright, a great exercise for developing that, and you'll see when I'm fully around, like you can see, like my whole hip area is pointing out there, where usually the person with tight hips, it's still pointing down at the ground. Alright, so that's how you do the hip roll. A great exercise. Usually a lot of the back pain people love this one.
Alright, hope you enjoyed those couple of exercises and give you a couple of ideas on what I mean by how to use firstly a stability and mobility exercise to then progress to a much more dynamic explosive power thing. The one that would bridge the gap in between would be the cable wood chop that I showed you earlier. That can be done from many different positions and learning to weight shift and all those things. So there's a lot of other videos and exercises, and you can get a stack of those from a lot of our reports, and even from a YouTube channel. There's heaps of different ones that I can show you. If you're someone with back pain, you want to know a bit more, I would encourage you to get our back pain, because I do go into a lot more detail and give you about 60 exercises, and there's a book of about 100 pages you can get as well, and it's pretty cheap, only $9. If you're more in the sports side of things, you can get our little black book of training segments that has about 150 pages of stuff and all different programs, and there's quite a few that are golf and tennis in there if you're a sports player in football as well. Plus various other ones that are very much like functional and core strength orientated, so a lot of beginner, intermediate, advanced things. And I would highly encourage you to get a free report, functional training, right? So that'll help you grasp the concepts of all these things that I'm just brushing over here, just to make sure the video doesn't go too long. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed the video today, and I'll see you on the next one.